of AI and digital health, one is likely to get a picture like this. The impression is that we will be collecting information from various sources. These are traditional sources such as sensors and new wireless sensors and wearables, including imaging, genomics, and electronic health records. And now we've got this tool, so-called machine learning, AI, or digital health, that is able to process that information and ultimately provide solutions to some of the most intractable healthcare challenges, and then lead to fundamental new ways of practicing medicine. Of course, there is a fair amount of hype around this. And in this talk, I will look at machine learning and digital health mainly from the perspective of large-scale epidemiology. That is the work that we have been doing. And for those who are not familiar with what I mean by large-scale epidemiology, these are these two orange circles here, the areas that for the past few decades we have been working on, including randomized clinical trials, meta-analysis, epidemiological or observational studies, and use of electronic health records, and the so-called health informatics that draws information from them. But the interesting aspect here is how those old tools and approaches can be enhanced with new digital technologies. So let me just first provide an example of what large-scale epidemiological studies have been able to do even without AI and digital health. So take an example of atrial fibrillation and risk of vascular disease.
Digital visa untuk kalian yang lapar akan hiburan. Digital visa untuk kalian yang penasaran dengan pengetahuan. Digital visa.
It's a great pleasure to be here today virtually, and many thanks for the invitation. So I'm just gonna talk about machine learning and digital technologies in the context of epidemiological studies and clinical trials. If one looks at the popular perception of AI and digital health, one is likely to get a picture like this. The impression is that we will be collecting information from various sources. These are traditional sources such as sensors and new wireless sensors and wearables, including imaging, genomics, and electronic health records. And now we've got this tool, so-called machine learning, and ultimately provide solutions to some of the most intractable healthcare challenges, and then lead to fundamental new ways of practicing medicine. Of course, there is a fair amount of hype around this. And in this talk, I will look at machine learning and digital health mainly from the perspective of large-scale epidemiology. That is the work that we have been doing. And for those who are not familiar with what I mean by large-scale epidemiology, these are these two orange circles here, the areas that for the past few decades we have been working on, including randomized clinical trials, meta-analysis, epidemiological or observational studies, and use of electronic health records, and the so-called health informatics that draws information from them. But the interesting aspect here is how those old tools and approaches can be enhanced with new digital technologies. So let me just first provide an example of what large-scale epidemiological studies have been able to do even without AI and digital health. So take an example of atrial fibrillation and risk of vascular disease. So atrial fibrillation is the most common dysrhythmia in the world. And if you ask clinicians about what is the problem with atrial fibrillation, you're invariably likely to get an answer that the problem is that people who suffer that dysrhythmia are more likely to be at risk of future stroke. Therefore, we need to have preventive strategies for mitigating that risk. If one wants to look at that question about, in fact, what is the risks associated with atrial fibrillation, not only stroke, but in this case, look at a number of other vascular problems. And one uses the data set that comprises 40,000 patients using routinely collected information from electronic health records. This is the picture that one might get. So the lines that you can see for the hazard ratios, they depict the confidence interval, and they're so wide that they cross the presented view here, and it's very hard to discern any clear pattern. If one increases the sample size to 400,000, the pattern starts to emerge. Now we see a sort of a clear association of atrial fibrillation, for instance, with ischemic heart disease or stroke. But as we go to even higher numbers, increase it by an order of magnitude to 4 million patients, and suddenly we see that atrial fibrillation is not only a risk factor for stroke, as clinicians commonly believe that is the case, but is actually associated with a number of other conditions. For some of them, including heart failure, for instance, the relative and absolute risk seems to be even higher than that for stroke. So this would not be possible with use of large-scale data sets and statistical analysis. Not only that, of course, access to very large-scale data sets such as electronic health records allow us to investigate associations for diseases that have not been subject to previous research because they have not been very common. That allows us to discover hidden associations. And let me take the case of valvular heart disease as an example. If one looks at medical textbooks, valvular heart disease is typically thought to be a degenerative condition in most cases, which suggests that we are not aware of the risk factors contributing to this. But again, if one uses the large-scale electronic health records, this is in a series of studies that have been done, one suddenly sees actually there are enough number of people in those data sets that could start investigating the risk factors. And here, when we look at blood pressure, we see a similar association between elevated blood pressure and risk of major valvular disorders. And the pattern is consistent with what we have known for heart attack and stroke. In other words, a disease that thought to be degenerative is no longer degenerative. We have got a modifiable risk factor for this. Those studies are what we call large N studies. So by that, I mean, we've got a large number of patients or subjects in our data set for analysis, but we typically use conventional statistical methods where the analyses are confined to a limited number of covariates or features. But of course, the promise of machine learning and digital health is to use alternative analytical approaches that leverage not only the large N in those data sets, but also the large P, where we have got multiple measurements per individual high-dimensional data set often. And the question is, how can machine learning help and advance healthcare and science in that field? In order to understand what the potential role of digital health might be, it is perhaps best to just look at a healthcare professional's job and how they make decisions. So I tend to sort of conceptually divide the work of a healthcare professionals into three types of activities. One of the main activities is to make diagnosis. And if one tries to just explain what that is in a sense an act of predicting what the problem that the patient presents with is. So in other words, this is a kind of a pattern recognition. The next type of main activity that healthcare professionals perform is to predict the cause of a disease for a patient, which is a type of forecasting. And finally, intervention, which is to predict how the patient will respond to a particular intervention, and that falls more into the realm of causal inference or causal prediction. But if one looks at these type of activities, it becomes very clear that ultimately prediction is at the core of all of them. Of course, there is a level of judgment that is required as well, but ultimately predicting the course of a disease or the diagnosis that one has or the outcome is what healthcare professionals is expected to do. And of course, we all know that machine learning is all about prediction. So it wouldn't be too surprising if one sees how many of those aspects of a healthcare professional's job are likely to be enhanced over time. If one looks at scientific discovery, it is very clear that those tools that we are gaining access to, the digital tools, are accelerating scientific discovery to an extent that was not possible a few years ago. And that is to a large extent because those tools are much more efficient in data processing tools that we have by comparison with the old techniques that we've had. So I'm not going to talk much about the scientific discovery, but if one looks at decision making in healthcare practice, there have been sometimes a concern that, in a sense, those tools will challenge the healthcare professional's job and in fact threaten their job. But we all know that is unlikely to be the case, at least in the foreseeable future. And a way to look at it is how those tools can enhance their decision making and improve the quality of care, is to just look at the system of healthcare delivery in this two-dimensional space as presented here, where on the y-axis we've got the level of training and skills of individuals from low to high for performing a particular task, and on the other axis, on the y-axis, the complexity of the tasks from low to high. Ideally, what one wants to do in an efficient system to have the tasks and training matched with the complexity of the task, so to be ideally in that green zone. If this is not the case, if we essentially burden highly skilled individuals or systems to perform low complexity tasks, we will be getting inefficient care. And on the end of the spectrum, if people have not got the minimum required level of training and skills for a relatively high complex task, then we would get ineffective or unsafe care. And what digital tools will do is, in a sense, to enhance that green zone for better matching of skills with the task complexity, that we are more often in that optimal zone and avoid inefficient or ineffective care. But putting that aside, of course, one of the great promises of applying machine learning to clinical data is the possibility of learning optimal per-patient treatment routes. That is the term that is often used, is personalized medicine or precision medicine, and they're often used interchangeably. So for those who are not familiar with what that is, I'm just going to explain briefly what the typical case for personalized or precision medicine is, where it is sometimes being seen as an alternative to population medicine that is failing. So a typical case for precision medicine talks about in precision medicine, where, as shown in the figure here to the right, it shows how treatments given to individuals just work in a fraction of the people. The case that is being made is that treatments will not work for most people who have been given the treatment. Therefore, we must sharpen our tools and identify those individuals for whom the treatment will work spectacularly. And how can we distinguish between the responders and non-responders becomes fundamentally the challenge of precision medicine. Let me just give an example, which is not on that figure to the right, but very similar to those. If one looks at the case of blood pressure lowering treatment, which is widely used and is thought to be one of the major achievements of population medicine, and one looks at how many individuals need to be treated for about 5 years to prevent one cardiovascular event, the number is typically in the order of 50. So 50 individuals treated over 5 years will translate on average to one patient being prevented from having a future cardiovascular events. So by the same token, the proponents of precision medicine would argue that the treatment does not work in 98% of individuals, or 99% of individuals, depending on how one looks at it. And therefore, we need to have better tools. But there has been a lot of debate about it, and it is very clear that some of those arguments are fundamentally based on statistical misconceptions about treatment failure. The first one is the confusion of low incidence conditions, the low base rate, the low effectiveness of interventions. I won't go into that, but of course, when the base rate of a case, as is the case for preventive medicine, is low, then we will always have to treat many people to prevent an outcome, a bit like an insurance policy that is often forgotten. There is often confusion about the deterministic or the probabilistic multi-cause nature of most chronic conditions, which are not deterministic, so it's impossible to just have only one tool that would eradicate a particular disease. We require a multi-pronged approach for prevention of many common chronic conditions. And again, I won't go into details of that. A lot has been written about it. But the last point that I want to just say a few words about is the misunderstanding of the notion of individual risk, and therefore the undue criticism that is given to average treatment effects, which is the foundation of epidemiology and clinical trials. To just expand on that point, that where the proponents of precision medicine argue that average treatment effects are the key problem, and we need to personalize risk models for better management and more efficient management. So I'd like to just highlight that one thing that is often forgotten is that patients actually do not have an individual risk that is unique to them and fixed. We know from numerous, in fact, very old studies that risk is a conditional group level probability. And this will vary, the risk will vary depending on the predictors considered, the model used, and over time. So that means that any individual can belong to an infinite number of groups, and this also means that the predicted risk will vary according to the group they're being assigned to, and that is the term that John Venn coined in 1866, the so-called reference class problem. People can essentially belong to different reference classes. In fact, for binary outcomes, such as heart attack or stroke or death, an individual will not obviously have a probability of suffering an event. It means at the level of individual, the person will either get the event or not. So therefore, the risk cannot be determined. Models will only provide an estimate of the true risk, with a few exceptions that are probably not worth mentioning. And these fundamental features of risk means that no amount of data or modeling technique can really overcome this challenge and provide true risk for an outcome of an individual. If this sounds a bit too grim, I want to just highlight that this does not mean that risk prediction and better risk models are not going to be of any added value. By having more refined tools for risk prediction, we can discriminate groups of individuals and identify more meaningful subgroups within that population who might have a different response to treatment or an intervention. And that is why we tend to refer, instead of personalized medicine, to stratified medicine, which means essentially smaller subgroups that are looked through its particular lens, are very similar, and therefore it makes it worthwhile to assess whether the response to treatment differs. And the way one looks at it is to look at treatment or treatment risk interactions. But again, a few words to just cautious comments about this is that when interactions are found, they are typically only hypothesis generating and require further testing, and that was eloquently shown some studies and modeling studies where people looked at, for instance, in this case, response rate to a certain asthma treatment, where there seems to be an apparent threshold where people who respond could be clearly delineated from people who don't respond. While this might suggest that we have now identified our responders and we can personalize treatment, when one goes and repeats that test in a second setting, as shown here in a figure to the right, that pattern of distinction tends to disappear. And that shows that often the apparent delineation of populations into different strata is actually spurious and is not confirmed upon further testing. And that has been shown over and over again. This is an example of the work that we have done where we looked at effect of blood pressure lowering on prevention of cardiovascular disease, where there have been a lot of debate about whether people with previous cardiovascular disease will get the same level of benefit than people without, or in fact, whether the level of blood pressure itself is an important factor for prevention. In other words, does it make a difference if someone's blood pressure is high to receive treatment for blood pressure lowering versus someone whose blood pressure is in the mid-range or low? And when one looks at all major clinical trials data and stratifies patients into different groups, in the top panel by risk of cardiovascular disease, in the lower panel by, in the top panel by history of previous cardiovascular disease, and in the lower panel by categories of major cardiovascular blood pressure at baseline, what one sees is here, as depicted by the hazard ratios and P4 interaction, there is no statistical evidence that any particular subgroup will have a qualitatively or quantitatively different level of risk reduction. So this disputes the notion that stratified medicine will fundamentally transform the way we have been making decisions about, at least in the context of cardiovascular risk prevention using blood pressure lowering treatment. So having said that, and having shown those examples of the limited experience and limited positive insights about stratification, it is worth just looking at what the opportunities are for machine learning, for personalized, or as I explained earlier, better called stratified medicine are. One of the problems that we have with the average treatment effects is that for low-risk events, the distribution in the population, distribution of the risk is likely to be skewed as depicted here on the figure. And what that means that the average treatment effects may not reflect the experience of the typical patient. And that average effects could be determined by minority of high-risk patients. So because there is a difference between median typical patients that we see in the population and mean, which is the average patient that is used statistically to determine effects of treatments. That is a potential challenge that one needs to overcome. And the other challenge that we have is that the statistical prediction tools that we use for predicting risk for some of the major outcomes, in this case, if one looks at cardiovascular disease prevention, they tend to be reasonably good in terms of their properties of discrimination. But if one looks at their reliability in terms of comparing at the level of individual, to what extent are predictions consistent between different models, and the picture looks less optimal. So, for instance, in one study, people looked at, if we apply 10 different risk prediction tools that are all considered to be validated and recommended for prediction of cardiovascular disease, how consistent will be the same individuals here on the x-axis be ranked as high risk or low risk, or what would be the numerical risk of that individual of suffering a future cardiovascular event. And as this figure shows, is that particularly for people at high risk, the range of risk seen among some individuals is very high. For instance, for patient 2 here, across all models, the predicted range was anything from 22% over to 72%. And overall, the agreement between the two models was about only 67%, which is pretty much as good as comparing a statistical model with a rough risk estimation by a doctor without using a risk model. And sometimes people have just said, because the models are inaccurate, we just need to create ensemble models of combining many of them. And it has been shown that doesn't help in enhancing the performance of such models. And that comes back to the point that the variation that we see between those is not necessarily around so-called true risks. So therefore, combining multiple models does not get us closer to that true risk and does not improve precision. And sometimes people have just said, because the models are inaccurate, we just need to create ensemble. This is, I believe, an area where machine learning and digital technologies could help. There are a number of applications of that, and there's not much time to go through all of those. It is clear that there have been examples done by us and others looking at how those tools can better help with disease phenotyping, identifying subsets of populations with the same phenotype of a disease, looking at comorbidity clustering, how people could be different based on a number of other diseases that they have, and obviously enhancing risk prediction and more towards causal inference. And one of the applications that we are very familiar with is applying that those technologies to electronic health records, which tend to be high dimensional information in a temporal fashion, where information is being recorded at irregular intervals about interventions, medication, diagnostics, and so on for an individual, with a lot of variability and biases in information and recording. So, but if one uses that data set and compares just the traditional machine learning models, such as gradient boosting model, and that is what we did in one of the studies, trying to predict who is likely to be admitted to hospital, applied to data of about 5 million people. One looks at a best statistical model, a survival model, and the average AUC that one would get is about 0.755. By using a basic machine learning gradient boosting model, we can already enhance that AUC to 788. If we just add some temporal elements to that, the performance was substantially higher to 0.85. We know that there are even more powerful machine learning models, and we have had examples of using transformer-based neural networks for prediction. And here, depending on, again, what data sets and what outcome one looks at, we saw a substantial improvement in model performance. And of course, those tools applied to electronic health records are not just about prediction. And we see a number of studies that are looking at how those models, in a very agnostic way, are able to just cluster individuals either cross-sectionally or temporally according to the diseases that they have. How the models can actually learn essentially how certain diseases are likely to be closer to each other, provide some level of interpretability about what are likely to be the risk factors of one disease to leading to another one, and even doing some hypothesis testing studies towards causal inference, to gaining mechanistic insights about the diseases that lead from one area to another one. But of course, all of that discovery that I've mentioned before is likely to just lead to ever more hypotheses that require ultimately testing in clinical trials. And that brings me to the point of digital randomized clinical trials, where we see an opportunity of tackling that bottleneck, not only in terms of scientific discovery, but also reaching to underserved and difficult to reach populations. So just a few words at the end on that front. So to just say again, we are seeing an accelerated innovation in biotech. Some of those examples have been remarkably demonstrated during COVID. We have seen very rapid discovery of molecular targets for treatments. We have seen omics, we have seen in silico trials, that is simulation studies, before going into human studies, and that obviate the need for many clinical trials, but at the same time lead to discovery of many new compounds or interventions. And that means that ultimately all of those products, whether these are sort of mRNA tools, AI algorithms, or devices, they would need to be tested in human studies and in clinical trials. But on the other side, what we have been seeing over the past couple of decades is that clinical trials have become ever more complicated, labor-intensive, and expensive. The amount of data, the type of data that is being collected in those studies is just getting richer. The reporting of those studies and the regulation around how data is being managed is getting more complicated. And that means that those are essentially reserved to a few specialist centers to perform. And as I've said, they've become very expensive to conduct. And as a consequence, there is a huge risk that some of those important questions will not get answered. Not only that, if one looks at it about what is happening in terms of participant recruitments, because of the complexity of the studies, we have been seeing that the recruitment typically is focused more around specialist units and leaving many potential participants out who live in remote areas, and because the burden for those participants to just attend clinics and to be recruited is just higher. And as a consequence, we will have an ever narrowing bottleneck in product evaluation in the clinical trials, with many products remaining clinically untested. And here, we have been working on a digital solution to that with a product called Zista that provides, in a sense, a secure and modular intelligent platform for a unified clinical trial management, and that essentially makes the conduct of clinical trials remotely radically more efficient, and brings in the knowledge to non-experts to enable new and established researchers to focus on the product that they want to evaluate, as opposed to the technical nuances of clinical trial management. So in that context, I want to just say, there's not enough time to go through this, but of course, if you think of clinical trials, think Zista Digital, which I believe will enhance substantially the experience of the users and enable some new, radically more efficient clinical studies, and ultimately lead to greater innovation in the field. Thank you very much. There's not enough time to go through this, but of course, if you think of clinical trials and Zista Digital.
Thank you very much, Professor Kazim. So I guess this is the final video of the keynote speaker from Professor Kazim. Okay, so we shall give a big applause to Professor Kazim to share his research in our keynote speaker keynote sessions. So he gave future challenges, opportunities of machine learning approach to solve problem in context of epidemiology and clinical trials in combination with the digital technologies. So there is So now it's a session, question and answer session. So from the last update, I got informed by the organizer that Professor Kazim will try to connect to with us via audio. Hope, but he is not here yet. So I will try to read the question. The first question is from Dr. Andes, Retantyo Wardoyo, Ph.D. So the question is, which one is the most effective method for prediction? Say disease, uh, machine learning, case-based reasoning, or expert system. So that was the question. So because we cannot see the Professor Kazim is not joined here yet. So we will try to pass your questions to Professor Kazim, and then hopefully we wish him and his family to recover very soon. So I will give. Uh, maybe if there is no other questions, I will hand in again the, this session to our master of ceremony. Okay. So seemingly there is, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Rahimi and also Mr. Aditya, PhD. And now we would like to kindly invite both of you to have a photo session. We would like to invite our lovely moderator, Mr. Aditya, PhD, to have this photo session. All right, so we would like to count 1, 2, 3.
It's a great pleasure to be here today virtually.
So we're going to
and many thanks for the invitation. So I'm just going to talk about machine learning and digital technologies in the context of...
All right. So thank you so much, Mr. Aditya, PhD, for the very amazing session. We do apologize for this. But once again, let's pray for everyone. Keep health and, of course, stay safe, everyone. So ladies and gentlemen, we will take a short break after this before continuing to the next session. That is modeling sentiment and contrasting opinion on COVID-19 pandemic on social media, linking computer science and social science. And once again, if you have further questions regarding to the previous session, please kindly type the questions and send us to the email at ICoICT@telkomuniversity.ac.id, and we will forward the questions to Professor Rahimi. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, we would like to remind all the officers and also presenters to make sure to prepare yourself for accepting the award of the Best Paper Award of the NINT ICoICT 2021, which will be awarded tomorrow. Therefore, we would like to invite every one of you to attend tomorrow's session. There's still more interesting topics to discuss. And so ladies and gentlemen, we will have a short break and we will start the next session at 5 p.m. Please kindly return to the forum, kindly return to the main room on time. So ladies and gentlemen, have take a great break.
wondrous civilization. Disposed to tranquility. With scenic landscapes bordered by the sea. Here, mythologies become principle. And religions create the cornerstones of life. It is contained in the arts and crafts, where celestial ceremonies become part of popular culture. Legacies of glorious traditions, where folktales are regarded as guidebooks to perfection, honed over centuries, yet possible to experience within a few hours. Experiences you can take home. Here, art preservation is a tourist attraction. History is a living monument. Even shopping is meaningful. See world-famous resorts compete with local means of accommodation. Enjoy natural kindness. Or the excitement of exploring nature. With endless stories to tell. And never-ending feasts. Never-ending possibilities. To get more out of life and journeys. Yogyakarta. Wonderful. And never-ending feasts. Never-ending possibilities.
Bandung is your first place to learn about happiness and the virtue of life. Let me take you around Bandung. If you look closer, you can see beauty in almost everything we see. From the steamy crater, the deer running to your arms, and your smile. Don't be afraid to change your perspective. It is worth the world. Bandung will teach you a lot of things. It will make you realize that virtue comes from hard work and sincerity, to always give the best for everything that comes to life. Each lesson that you receive will bring you closer to yourself. And isn't this the purpose of living? To remember who we really are. I can't promise you the world, But anything you learn from this journey will be your weapon to face any challenge in the future. Time goes by. People change. I'll stay the same. Follow your guts to explore. Don't let life kill your passion to wander. When you wander, you will see wonder, excitement, joy, and happiness. It doesn't matter if life brings you up and down, I will be here for you. Holding your soul wherever you go, though I can't always hold your hands. To the young heart that explores, live life, share happiness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the evening session. So now let's start the next session. The next agenda is the sixth keynote speech, which will be presented in the form of recorded presentation by Dr. Muhammad Hardiman Barawi from University Malaysia Sarawak under the title Modeling Sentiment and Contrastive Opinion of COVID-19 Pandemic on Social Media, Linking Computer Science and Social Science. And in this session will be directed by Dr. Retantyo Wardoyo, M.Sc. Ph.D. from Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. Please allow me to kindly read Dr. Wardoyo's brief summary. Dr. Retantyo Wardoyo, M.Sc. Ph.D. is an associate professor at Department of Computer Science and Electronics, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. He pursued his bachelor degree in mathematics from Universitas Gadjah Mada and then continued his M.Sc. in computer science and Ph.D. in computation from University of Manchester, United Kingdom. His research area is on computation, intelligent systems, fuzzy logics, and decision support systems. And his recent publications are Radius SMUT, a new oversampling technique of minority samples based on radius distance for learning from imbalanced data, IEEE Access Q1, and improving classification performance of vital umbilical cord using combination of SMOTA method and multi-classifier voting in imbalanced data and small dataset IJIES Q2. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Wardoyo, Ph.D.
Thank you very much, Ms. MC, for the introduction. This is the last keynote speaker for today, which will be given by Dr. Muhammad Hardiman Barawi, entitled Modeling Sentiment and Contrastive Opinion of C-19 Pandemic on Social Media, which is linking computer science and social science. Now, before I gave the floor to Dr. Barawi, let me introduce a bit about Dr. Muhammad Hardiman Barawi. He works at the Department of Cognitive Science, Faculty of Cognitive Science and Human Development, University Malaysia, Sarawak. He obtained his PhD in computing science. Well, it's more like computation science in University of Aberdeen, United Kingdom, near Loch Ness. And the research area is sentiment analysis. And his recent publications, a unified latent variable model for contrastive opinion mining, extractive and abstractive sentence labeling of sentiment-bearing topics, split offer training for unsupervised purchase intention identification, and usability evaluation of a virtual reality smartphone app for a living museum. So we gave all the floor to Dr. Muhammad Hardiman Barawi. Please.
Hi.
Of a virtual reality smartphone app for
Welcome
a
to the
living museum.
ICoICT 2021, the ninth
So
ICoICT.
we gave
I'm very
all the
sorry
floor
that I cannot
to
join
Dr. Muhammad
you
Hardiman
in
Barawi.
the Yogyakarta. However, I've sent my video here. Hopefully that in the future I'll be able to join you all. So before I start, I'd like to say many thanks to the organizing committee, the chair of the ICoICT 2021, to the Telkom University Indonesia, to the IEEE Indonesia sections, and to all of you who have sacrificed your time to be with me today. So today the topic that I'm going to share with you all is about sentiment analysis, where we can apply these methods to do many things, to look for important keywords, important sentiments, insights on opinions, and of course how this field sentiment analysis has been applied in the COVID-19 situations nowadays. So these are the perhaps what I would like to talk about today. So first of all, we'll start with why it's important, and then I would start with topic model. Why topic model? I will explain to you just after this, and then start with the sentiment by topic model, and then start with the opinion summarizations. So many of us change our way of buying things, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we used to buy a lot of things by physically. We go to the store and there will be a salesman or sales girls coming to us and then try to perhaps doing some demonstration and try to give us some advice on what's the pros and cons of certain products. For example, if you go to a electronic shop or to the electrical shop to buy a new air conditioner, there will be a salesman or sales girl that say, okay, this model A, model B, model C, what are the differences, what are the maybe prices. So you have salesmen to tell something, then they do some demonstrations. But during the COVID-19, okay, you won't be able to go to the shop directly physically because of some restriction orders, or because you have been quarantined, maybe home quarantine, or maybe you are somewhere that is not quite safe to do physical shopping. So this is where things like sentiment analysis is important. So if you go back, or if you try to recall what you've been doing during the COVID-19, for example, you want to buy some spots, or you want to buy some new things, for example, a new handphones, or perhaps a laptop for online teaching and learning. So what you do, you cannot go to the shop, so you go to online website. For example, you go to eBay. In Malaysia, we have what we call Shopee. We have a Lazada. So we have all these things. So what you do, you go to the search box, then try some keywords. For example, you typing mobile phone or smartphone, you enter, and then there it will show you to a few pictures with different prices. Okay, so how do you decide you want to buy from this shop, this shop, this shop? Obviously, the thing that you're looking for is the reviews. The shop with more reviews, in your opinion, would be giving you much more credits, which seems to be, okay, I believe this because there's a lot of customers buying from these shops, online shop. But again, once you click on that shop, there's a lot of phones there, from iPhone, Samsung, maybe Huawei, Oppo. There's a lot of phones. Which one you need to buy based on your budgets? And of course, you have certain criteria that you are looking for. So what you do, we start to read reviews by some buyers. Oh, they will tell you something, I like iPhone, but the price is a bit expensive. I like this Samsung, but something I like this. So you read all the reviews. Okay, why you want to read all the reviews? Because you want to build your confidence, so that you don't make any wrong decision when you buy something. So this, okay. But there will be a lot of comments, there will be a lot of reviews on certain products. Maybe for iPhone there may be about 300 400 buyers comment about iPhones. It could be positive review, it could be negative review. Same with other products. But how can you manage all this? There's so many reviews there. Are you going to read all these reviews? For example, 5,000 reviews. Are you trying to read all of this? So this is where the sentiment analysis is important. So sentiment analysis study about opinions, attitudes, and emotions. So we try to understand the semantic parts and the opinion aspect of emotion aspect. Okay, so for example, the comment is about, I like iPhone, but it's expensive. So iPhone is the expect there. So expensive is sentiment there. Yeah. So it's some sort like emotion. It's too expensive, or I like the Samsung phone, but it's not too bad compared to iPhone. Too bad, is it meaning it's not good, or is it mean too bad mean it's not as good as iPhone? So these are the thing that we talking about. And sentiment analysis is a challenging thing because it is a natural language problem, and there's a lot of interesting thing happening in this related studies. For example, if you're applying the sentiment analysis studies in social sciences, for example, anything that related with politics, okay, business or financial market, well, anything related with human beings, there will always be emotion things related. Okay, so what you can do with sentiment analysis, okay, one of the thing that is quite interesting is when you want to know there's a certain political commands on certain political parties. You want to know how much or how many people talk about this positively, how many don't like about another party, and what do they don't like, what they don't like about. So these are sentiment analysis, and this is again, I might repeated my points earlier, but these are the a few of the things that I've tried to gather that is make it why it's important. For example, during the pandemic like COVID-19, we can use sentiment analysis methods to do real-time analysis from social media. So what we do, we can go to the social media such as Twitter, such as Facebook, and we put extract information. For example, COVID-19 vaccine related discussions. We can do insights on public perceptions, concerns, and perhaps emotion that may influence the achievement of the herd immunity goals. For example, before, when I think most of the country in the world they have this skeptical thinking, when when the WHO introduced the use of vaccine, there's a lot of rumors talking about the effectiveness of vaccine. Why they want to use this vaccine is being developed in such a short time, when many of the other vaccines been developed in maybe 5 to 10 years, but for COVID-19 it's about less than 2 years. So this has been created a lot of perception among the publics, and this is where this is where the sentiment analysis plays role to analyze all these sentiments in the public opinion. Why are people nervous about COVID-19 vaccination? So you can extract this easily. Okay, they expect. So is it safe to take COVID-19 vaccine? So this is based on the positive comment that you've been extracting. You can see, it's like, for example, 70% of the community are positive about taking COVID-19, while 20 is 50-50, and the rest is like anti-vaccine, for example. So you can get this information easily using sentiment analysis, and you can use this for sorting data large scale. For example, the sort of tweets. Can you imagine sorting through thousands of tweets, customer support conversation or surveys? There's just too much business data to process manually, so you can do it easily with sentiment analysis. And of course, when we are reading the reviews, as a human, we tend to be biased. So for example, if you, before this, for example, handphone, again, I'm using a handphone as an example because everybody uses handphone, we know about handphone. Okay, so for example, if you use handphone, you are biased. All this while you're using, for example, iPhones. There will be another phone, this much more cheaper, with almost the same technology like iPhone, because you've been using iPhone for quite some time. So when you read the reviews, when there's another parties or another group that's talking other than iPhone, you feel bad about it. You think, this is not true. But why? Because we are biased. So using sentiment analysis approach, we can reduce this bias, especially when we want to annotate a text, when we want to take a text. And also it's estimated about 60 to 65% of the time people agree when they are determined, when you want to determine whether this text is positive or negative, while most of the time they disagree. So it's quite a subjective thing to come to an agreement, because when you want to take a text, it's really highly subjective. It's influenced by personal experience, thoughts, and belief. So this will avoid this, not totally say avoid, but we can reduce this. And of course, the sentiment analysis thing is spread from computer science to management to social sciences, ranging from different kind of application, politics, business, financial market, health, and everything. I think I repeated this before in my introduction, just to remind you again how great this can. I mean, so many interesting things about this sentiment analysis that you can go and explore yourself. Well, how active is sentiment analysis, or how strong is this field? Okay, I'm going to share you some of the researchers here, as you can see in the slide here. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the guy who developed the approximation algorithm that is being used with the topic modeling. So topic modeling is been proposed by this guy David Bly, and this Michael Jordan is his actually his supervisor. And David Bly, as you can see here, they have a lot of citation in their papers. And after the emergence of topic model, which is one way of doing sentiment analysis, okay, then we have this Xianghua Lin, who's been developing a sentiment topic model, which is an extended version of the LDA itself. And I was being lucky and grateful that I am also the student of Xianghua, which I developed my own methods to interpret the topic models, which I will share in these slides. So why we talk about topic model? Because it's so much related with sentiment analysis. So when you do sentiment analysis, the things that you need to get is the keywords, the keywords. So once you get the keywords, then you determine whether this keyword is positive or negative. So how would you like to do that? There are a few ways. So one of the ways they can use is TF-IDF. They can use PLSA, or latent semantic analysis, and of course the later version is called topic modeling. So topic modeling is some sort of like the better version of all these TF-IDF and LSA combined. Another word for topic model is called LDA, latent Dirichlet allocation. So the simplest topic model is called LDA. Okay, so basically what it did is it tried to organize the document that belong to the same group. So let's say you have 10,000 of documents. When you apply a topic model, it will categorize this automatically into, for example, sports, entertainment, health, news, thing like this. So you can apply this technique, this approach, to variety of things: data, images, purchase logs, social network, music. Almost most of the text you can apply, and it's easy to extend and implement. And this topic model is based on the bag of words model for the representation of the text when you do inside the data. So the topic model the basic of the topic model is we have a lot of data, unlabeled data, the data without labeling. So basically this is unsupervised machine learning. So I have a lot of this data, and then you get this data going to the LDA model, which is the topic model itself. In the topic model, then you do the posterior inference. This is where this Michael Jordan guy came in, the approximation algorithm. So in the topic model, we have two ways of doing the approximations. We have the variational methods, which is been proposed by Michael Jordan, and we have another one which is called Gibbs sampling. So you can use either of this to do your posterior inference. Once you do your posterior inference, okay, then you will get what we call the topics, okay, the topics that are related with each other, okay, and these are the topic that related with each other are under certain topics. But again, you have gathered all this topic, but if you are not the domain expert, it will be very hard for you to interpret all this topic here, for example. So this is one of the issue of topic model. So we need a lot of human expert to interpret it. So for example, here we have the term relevance weight feedback. Okay, we need somebody to interpret this. So if you don't have any basic about this domain, it will be very hard for you. Okay, but if you have, it will be very easy for you to interpret the topic model. So this is about retrieval. Stop it. Or information retrieval. So from topic model came a new model, which is the extension of topic model called sentiment bearing topic, which doing the job specifically. So when you want to do the topic model before, you have to filter down which topic contains sentiment words. Right? But in the sentiment bearing topic model, it will extract, the priority is given to extract sentiment bearing topic first. So you have a lot of topic all about the sentiments, related sentiments. So for example, here, as you can see here, on top of this is the normal topic model, computer models, information data system, network model, parallel method software. These are all topics. And the second one is the sentiment bearing topic model. So you can see here, we have Amazon, order, return ship, received, refund, damage, disappointed, policy, and happy. So in the first one, the normal topic model, we don't know about the sentiment of it. We only know about the topics. So just mainly thematic informations. But in the second one, we seems to know about, okay, it's about some topic about ordering something from the Amazon, and the sentiment is about people are not unhappy, and the aspects about, okay, probably they are unhappy with the order, with the product, with the thing like this. So these are the things that you can do with the sentiment topic modeling. So it's just like giving a new perspective in the sentiment analysis. Right now, you can do concentrating or focus your direction onto documented, oriented documents. So now you can do a lot of things with this thing. You can extract a lot of information, and these are the models that have been used by researchers in sentiment topic model, and they use this to extract all these sentiment bearing topics. And what they do next, they can do many things. They can do sentiment classification, they can do contrastive opinion mining to see how many people like this thing. For example, how many people like iPhone compared to how many people like Samsung, through all the reviews. Okay, they don't do the poll thing. Normally we do a polling. You give thing iPhone, Samsung, then people will start to click iPhone, Samsung, how many percent. But that is polling style or survey style. But this you extract directly from the reviews or from the comment, from the Facebook comment, from the Twitter comment. Extract it directly. So because sentiment topic model is an extension to the LDA, it aims to mine and uncover rich opinion structure from the text by the same way of LDA. In LDA, all the related topics will be under the same group, same topic together. But in the sentiment bearing topic model, all the related sentiment related to the topic will be under the same group together. So the input is the opinionated document, and once the data is fitted by the model, they can extract sentiment bearing topics, encoding opinion automatically. Also, sentiment topic model have been applied to a wide range of application. Okay, so for example, we have the or summarization. We have the opinion mining. Okay, and they also have been applying. Currently, they're trying applying in the fake news detections. So whether this people is telling right or not real news. So then they come up what we call the automatically generating meaningful labels for standard topics, which is previously after you have the topic model. Because the topic model is very hard to interpret, we have another method which try to generate label for it automatically. So if you can see here, trout, fish, fly fishing, water, this is under topic of fishing. Then we have another researchers, they try to combine two words together, become a bigram, and they will have this church arch or building window as a Gothic architecture, and also the quite a recent one by this guy, I trust, which try to use images to label the topics. And for my work, I try to do it differently. Instead of using a diagram or image to explain about the topics that's been extracted by topic model or by TF-IDF even, okay, I apply my approach, which is the sentence ranking relevance. So what I did is I extend the sentiment bearing topic model with a features that can do sentence relevancy. So instead of doing only words by words, now I can do up to the sentence itself. So as you can see, we show these are the top level. Sorry, these are the topics: money, don't, product, disappointed. And then the first one is the topics label generated by the first approach, the money, which is obviously by gram. And then the second one is using phrases, okay, food waste, zero waste, waste your money. And then we also have the most relevant sentences with the topic. Here's why I am sorely disappointed. And then these two are my approaches where I use a centroid, which is we try to calculate which among the related sentences, which sentence is the central, and then we try to use this to explain about the topics. And another approach, which is called the sentence labeling relevancy, which try to again, the purpose is to label the topic, to explain the topic. In other words, to summarize the opinions in the topics. Now, we have shown how this method can be applied in the COVID-19. I would like to show you some of the recent work that is being shared to analyze the COVID-19. For example, sentiment. This is a very simple, very basic of the sentiment analysis, where you are only doing positive or negative things, polarity. You are doing polarity of the things. So as you can see here, these are the overall sentiment of COVID-19 in USA and UK combined. It's recent paper 2021. You can see here we have negative sentiments about 28%. We have the neutral, and we have positive sentiment. So sentiment in UK and US are neutral, not so much. And the next one is about the hesitancy on the COVID-19 vaccine, where you can easily do and apply this technique to see or to survey. Not only this, but you can go to different type of vaccine. For example, For example, we have Pfizer, we have Moderna, we have Sinovac, we have the AstraZeneca, we have Johnson & Johnson. We can apply to see which one or the sentiment or which one people like it more. You can do this with sentiment analysis easily. And these are the frequency of word extracted using sentiment analysis. And all of these words you can extract in many approaches, but personally I am more towards the topic model approach because I'm from that school of thoughts. So what I will do for this kind of thing is I will extract using sentiment bearing topic models, extract all these sentiment words, sentiment topics, and I will convert it into what we call now, you can see as the word cloud. So it's much more easier and much more presentable to understand compared to you given the word with some probability scores. And this some sort of like giving you a very overview of everything about the data, give you more insight about data, and it gives you things like, oh, I think for example in the second picture is about Wuhan news China phenomena. Okay, now maybe perhaps we want to see how many reviews or comments that's talking about phenomena that is actually COVID-19 patients. So you can do a lot of things with this sentiment analysis. I'm sorry. So I guess I'm at the end of my slides. So with the current situation of the pandemic, especially COVID-19, where we have been moving to a new norm, a lot of things we are doing it online, a lot of data online, a lot of reviews, a lot of people communicating online. So there's a lot of text data, a lot of opinions, a lot of people giving their opinion because there's nothing to do at home. They only have computers that to comment and everything. There's a lot of things you can explore this sentiment. It's a very fun thing to do. It can help you to build your business empires, to improve on your research products. For example, you want to know how many people are researching a certain field in computer science. So what you do, just go to some discussion forum, you extract all this discussion forum, apply sentiment analysis, and then now people are going towards AI, machine learning. They are working into deep learning, or now they are working into deep fake, deep voice, something like that. So easily you know about all of this without reading the whole thing. Okay, just by analyzing some other people's opinion, extract the sense of it and essence of it, and then make up your mind. Well, I guess that's all from me. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm very sorry if my records or presentation is not that maybe not meeting a lot of people physically perhaps might be affecting your ways of doing things. But again, I'm trying my best, and hopefully I will meet you again. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadiman Barawi, for the nice talk on sentiment analysis. And we have one question, so you might answer. The question from Mr. Agung T. Wibowo. Hello, Chief Hadiman. How come is Chief? Can we use the technique of in the commander system, and what benefit we can get by applying it? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rita. So this method you can use it in recommended system
So one of the way I've seen few papers doing this actually. So what they did is they try to improve the recommender system by applying the sentiment analysis. For example, you have a recommender system that try to recommend some, for example, some shirts or some shoes, right? And you wanted to know whether this particular personality fit with this kind of products. And how do you know that is correct or not? By trying to get or extracting the real data, sentiment analysis from the reviews, and then match it together by doing a simple mapping. This is how you benefit from sentiment analysis. I mean, in your recommended system. I hope that I answer your question. Again, Chief Ago.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Barawi. I don't think there's any more questions. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask something. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
Right, okay. Well, the problem with, I'm starting with this problem with sentiment analysis.
Yeah.
Let's say we compare two things,
okay.
Either cell phone or let's say two presidents like we had before, Prabowo and Pak Jokowi.
Oh.
Now the
That's very political.
The thing is that one sentence might positive to one and negative to another.
Yeah.
This is so we don't know how to judge whether this statement is positive or not.
Yeah.
And the second thing, we don't know who write the sentence, or you write the sentence, like the background. For example, if we talk about, let's say the writer is the follower of Jokowi, and he bad things. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's bad thing about Prabowo. Then how we consider it? Is it considered positive or negative? Because we never know the background of the one who write the sentence. Can you explain that?
Well, this actually quite a tough question, because it's political. I might be kidnapped after this. Yeah. So actually, you can read on one of my papers. So the paper is titled "Constructive Opinion Mining." So we actually did the work on this. So basically, as you know, that sentiment analysis, it depends on which side you are on. So your positivity or negativity, the way you think, is actually depending which side you are on. Okay. For example, I'm Asian, just like you all guys. So we Asian know about durian fruit, right? So for us, talking about durian is normal. So every time talking about durian, it's always be positive. Maybe then the negative part of durian is the price. Okay. But you talk about the same topic durian, you go to Europe, you go to UK, for example. I go to Manchester. Maybe I was having my durian feast on near the train station, and then people are talking about durian. I can give you like 70 to 80% they're talking bad thing about durian, negative. Okay, so the way we do this is there's actually there's an approach called constructive opinion mining. So basically, what this approach does is it is also the same. I mean, it's still based on the topic modeling. So what it did is it will group or classify all this topic in its different topic. Then it will do a recalculate whether this topic fall under this group. They do some simple statistic, and then this topic is under this. For example, there are 10 people talking about Jokowi, and then 20 people talking about Prabowo, and then they will compare how many negativity and how many. And then they will try to see whether the negative word is strong or not strong, and then this is how they determine. Okay, based on Prabowo side, this is positive. Based on Jokowi side, this is negative. This is how they do it. Actually, there's a paper on that. You can Google my name. It is actually the thing is called constructive opinion mining. Okay, I hope answer your question. Is it?
Yeah. Okay.
If I don't answer your question, you need to maybe we need to discuss about durian in maybe probably I go to Indonesia soon.
Okay. There's another question from Dr. Baisal, the dean, the dean in First question, what is the prospects for research in the area of comparative opinion mining? I did research in this area in 11, 12, but I stopped it because there are not many papers that cover these topics. I think the first question first.
Okay. So the thing now is, if we are here in especially we are in Nusantara part, we are in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Brunei. One of the things that we are still lacking is the corpus. For example, Indonesian corpus in Indonesian language or the Malay corpus. The one that I found out about the corpus of Indonesia is the 1 million project. 1 million words of Indonesian, they are making this into a corpus, but that is a very general corpus. It does not it does not have a real sentiment corpus where we know that this word is positive or negative, especially in a multi-diverse race like in Indonesia and Malaysia itself. You know, for example, I give you one example, very simple example. Okay, I'm not going to say this word because the word might hurt some feeling of my audience here. So the word I spell it out, B-U-T-U-H. In Indonesia, this word mean, you know, unit. But in Malaysia, this word B-U-T-H is a very, very no words to say in the public. So, you know, if you get what I mean, these are the things that we need to have. That's why we need a lot of the people doing this kind of research, so we can do some, you know, differentiation, we can improve on our composition data sets. So yeah, that's the first one. Yeah. Because a lot of this kind of sentiment, they are so related with English. Okay, there are few words currently that's in Chinese language, in Arabic as well, where they study about the Israelis and Palestinian dispute. They have, it's called lemon data sets. They have this kind of work. But for in Nusantara, Indonesia and Malaysia, not so much. We have. I mean, of course, we have out there. But
yeah, we have like seju is bad in Malay, but seju is good in Indonesia. Okay, do we have a second question from Dr. Baisal?
Yeah.
Currently, is there any commercial tool to perform feature level sentiment analysis? So we can use this result for some purposes, for example, for recommended system.
Commercial. I cannot answer this directly like that.
I don't think so.
This is a company actually in Aberdeen. If I tell, I will be biased to Aberdeen. Like I try to, you know, but as long, I mean, free, there's no software doing this. There's one software who do the scraping of data. It's called Octopus. I mean, it's a very simple data scraping technique where you can choose the website. You just click which one you want to scrape. You enter and it scrap all the data. But this is only scraping thing. But for the future labels and analysis, commercial tool directly, no. Facebook already closed their API for this kind of purposes. Actually, before where you can actually use the Facebook API, you can extract all these Facebook command and do analysis, and then you can confirm with their Facebook top rated. You know, now Facebook they have this top rated, they have this positive, negative. You can compare like that, but now I don't think the Facebook API is accessible to people unless you requested it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We still have a question from Isman, I think Isman Kurniawan. I have a question related to model development for sentiment analysis using non-standard Indonesian language, such as nge, ga, tidak, ga, etc. Is it necessary to convert each word become the standard one? How to make sure that different word with similar meaning will not give any bias to our model? I think this is similar to our example before. Between seju and seju.
Okay. That is currently there's a few work in this. Actually, what we call this technique is called cross-linguistic sentiment analysis. Meaning, for example, I'll give you one example, especially in Malaysia. They in one sentence, especially Facebook, they give you like 3 to 4 languages. For example, boleh tak tapaukan nasi lemak later on. So boleta is a Malay language, tapau is a Chinese word, later on is English word. And you encounter this kind of word in Facebook, in comment, or sometimes in the WhatsApp, in the phone. If you don't understand the Chinese word, for example, what is tapau? Then, oh, bungkus, you know. So these are the kind of thing. Well, for that question, okay. So that's why the sentiment analysis, in my approach, we are based on topic modeling. So topic modeling, it is not limited to the words, meaning you can apply in any languages because topic modeling is based on bags of word representation. So what we did, we will convert the words into some numbers, and that's it. Then what we do next is we want to see how many times this number and this number together. So that's it, the thing how you solve it. Whether you need to, again, I'm sorry, I forgot the question. You need, what do you need just now? Is it?
Wait a minute.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Non-standard.
Oh, somebody has raised. Yeah, ada yang raise hand. There's somebody raise hand.
Okay. Enggak, tidak, enggak. Oh, okay. Okay, you can actually put this in a list, and then you can actually replace it by simple coding. So you have a data set now, and you have this word, right? So if it is detect as enggak, automatically you convert into tidak. So you have a list of words, and then you can do that. So you standardize it directly like that. You can do that.
Okay. Somebody raise hand. Can you speak up? Can you speak up, or I don't know? Reza Nuarta.
My voice is not clear, is it? Is that the case?
No, I don't know how. Can he talk?
Okay, so the host, excuse me, the host has already given the chance. So the participants who raised his hand, would you please unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Okay. That's Reza, I think. Who's raised hand? Oh, he's gone.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We have another question from Siti Saadah. Do you think this sentiment analysis approach will lead to the better, safer, and faster solution in tackling C-19?
This is a very tough question.
I know.
In my opinion, tackling COVID-19, you have to get a vaccine first. That's the most important, to get your people vaccinated. It's not about talking in the social media. But okay, it will help the government. If there's a government, it will help the government to see what are the perception. So from this perception, we can find a solution. For example, in Malaysia previously, there are a lot of people who are skeptical about vaccine. They are not so sure whether they give some microchip in the vaccine. When they install your body, they can do a mind control. So these are the things. So once then the government started a television program. Every day they have this advertisement to say vaccine is safe, there's no microchip, something like that. You know, it will help you in terms of giving the right information. So we can avoid the fake news. I mean, we can reduce, okay, we can answer easily the fake news. So it's sort of like giving the community the right information, not to make them scared about this vaccine, because and of course there's a lot of people nowadays talking about this matter, this issue in social media because they are under quarantine or they are under movement restriction order. So of course this is a safer way, number one, a safer way to do your analysis instead of doing the traditional. I mean, if you are social science, like you have to go to houses or even meet person face to face physically to get some information, to do some interviews, you know. But this one, you just grab the data directly from the Twitter, from the Facebook, thing like that.
Yeah, just like the opinion that AZ contains pick.
Yeah. You know what happened? I'm gonna share you some cool information. So because people are not going out, so one durian is actually one of my favorite. Again, I'm talking about food here. Yeah. So what they did is I use the keyword durian. I extract all the data from the Twitter and the Facebook. Oh, this is the location. Oh, not enough. I need to know where I can get the cheap price. So this is one way of manipulating this thing. So you can get the cheap durian instead of going there and reading on the World Wide Web. So it saves your times.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to know that nowadays the way people looking for information is different compared to in the past 5 to 10 years. Now, what you did, if you don't know a thing, you just go to your Facebook status, you write something, and there will be some people comment on your Facebook. Whether it's right or wrong, it's up to them. But there will always be answer compared to you Googling, lot of hours Googling and reading until your brain, headache.
So how danger and how good is sentiment analysis?
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay.
Dr. Barawi.
Okay, I give you one of the example of what happened to the sentiment analysis. The Trump election? Before Donald Trump, the previous president. So what they did is they used this information from Cambridge Analytica. This is actually a UK-based company. So what this company does is it's monitor all these Facebook comments online, and they get some information. So Trump have this information hands. Oh, now the sentiment is like this. Then they change the perceptions. This is how they win. That's how they won the election. And then, if I'm not mistaken, this Cambridge Analytica has been banned in UK, and they got some lawsuits. So this is the bad thing about. It bad if you do it to manipulate people for some whatever reason. You can use this information. It is good for in terms of security. I would like to share one of my project, but cannot give you details because this is actually related with the security authority. Okay, so what they did is we have the riots reporting system. So you know what? They monitor your Facebook, the comments, so they know like there will be a riots or an attack about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. How they know? By the sentiment intensity. So I was the consultant for that project, but there's no paper, of course, because this is a consultancy project directly. So what I did, we create a very simple sentiment intensity program to extract all the highly negative sentiment words. So we can predict. Okay, for example, again, if you check in a political thing, Prabowo and then Jokowi again. So we know that there's a few of these followers are extreme people. So we extract all these things, and then we know, okay, there will be people or follower from this party. They will make something here, 3 o'clock. So before this happen, okay, we already do something. Maybe we send our cyber trooper there to counter the comment. No, actually, it's not true. Something like that. You can use that one, or you can use your physical. Send the anti-riots police there. It's up to you. You can using that one, or you can use a calmer words to settle them down. So this is how you do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Barawi. I think there's no more question, so I will conclude this last keynote speaker for today by Dr. Muhammad Hadiman Barawi. So I'll return this session to Miss M.Sc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barawi and Dr. Wardoyo, Ph.D. And now we would like to invite both of you to have a photo session. Would you please kindly turn your camera on? All right, so we would like to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And it's too formal. I think this time we'll have a very great session. It's such an interactive session. So would you please having a bit, relax. Okay, pose. All right, do you want to show your thumbs up to the camera? Right, that's awesome. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. That was very amazing. Thank you, Dr. Barawi and Dr. Andes Wardoyo, PhD, for this amazing session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the sixth keynote session marks the end of today's event. And we would like to remind all of you to attend tomorrow's session, as we will have keynote speeches and also tutorial speeches. Tomorrow, we will learn about COVID-19 modeling in Indonesia, a mathematician's apology. And first of all, we will have tutorial speech 4 entitled Bioinformatics Help Prevent and Control a Pandemic, What's Next, presented by Mr. Dani Saputra, PhD. And then there also be tutorial speech 5, Big Data, Trends, Challenges and Opportunity, which will be presented by Dr. Amdi Sahil Sayed. And there also be keynote speech 7, COVID-19 Modeling in Indonesia, a Mathematician's Apology, which will be presented by Professor Dr. Hadi Susanto. And then keynote speech 8, From Model Fit to Market Fit, a Path Towards Turning ML Research into ML Products with Real-World Fit, which will be presented by Dr. Reza Kharshidi. So ladies and gentlemen, there are also parallel session for tomorrow's schedule. So the detail of the schedule you can refer to the website, and those are the rooms and each topic of the room. And now, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the committee, I extend a warm gratitude to Telkom University Indonesia, Multimedia University Malaysia, Universitas Gadjah Mada Indonesia, the IEEE Indonesia section, IEEE Signal Processing Society Chapter, Indonesia Chapter, the Indonesian section Computer Society Chapter, keynote speakers, tutorial speakers, presenters, and attendees for your time and attention. And of course, to our everlasting supporter, Telkomsel, Telkom Indonesia, Telkom Sigma, Huawei, Yayasan Pendidikan Telkom, and Microsoft. So ladies and gentlemen, never forget, we would like to say thank you and good luck to all the committee for making this event a success. And we hope you gain valuable knowledge from now on until the day. And don't forget to attend tomorrow's session on the third day, since we have a lot of things to tell you, especially the award of the Best Paper Award of the NIT ICoICT 2021. So once again, we would like to say welcome, good luck. We would like to say good luck to all participants, of course, to the authors and also presenters for the whole event. So we are looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Don't forget, we will start tomorrow's event at 8. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yen Hamida, your Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Nowadays, the need to have some conveniences, amenities, and secure data services have become an important part to every business owner. Also, they want to have the system to be in a place that's affordable and accessible for them.